Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's webinar with Divided We Fall. Tonight, we are joined by Joe Schuman, who's on the screen with me right now. He is the founder and editor-in-chief of Divided We Fall. He started it in 2018 with his cousin and political pen pal, Robert Wilkes. And today he works to set the vision of the publication and build the team to meet that vision. During the day, Joe works as a civilian for the Department of Defense, promoting innovation and emerging technology, and serves as an officer in the Air National Guard. And joining us as well, we also have Arman or Alan Amini, who is the executive director of Divided We Fall. He serves to support its important work, and during the day, he is a public sector management consultant. He previously served in Teach for America in the Southeast Arkansas area and is a Fulbright Fellow in Central Asia. He's a Council on Foreign Relations team member and earned his master's at Dartmouth and his master's at Harvard as well. He also has a degree in computer science from the University of Pennsylvania. So Joe, if you'd like to go ahead and kick us off, feel free.
Awesome. Thanks, Devin. Appreciate it. Hey, everybody. Thanks for dialing in. As Devin said, I'm Joe Schuman. I'm the founder of Divided We Fall. Definitely excited to be here and give you an overview of kind of who we are as an organization, what we do, and answer any of your questions. So yeah, Divided We Fall. We'll give you the whole down and dirty. The short of it is we're a nonprofit news publication dedicated to civil discourse and bipartisanship. Really what we do is produce bipartisan debates, written debates, and publish them to a diverse audience to expose readers to different viewpoints and demonstrate what productive civil discourse can look like. So that's what we do now. But where we started and kind of our origin story begins with a personal relationship between myself and my cousin, Robert Wilkes. So he, pictured here, actually was a Vietnam veteran himself. Claims to have been one of the only Jewish naval fighter pilots in the Vietnam War. Attempted to find others, never did. So to the best of our knowledge, that's true. He was very different than me in a lot of ways. He was my dad's cousin, so different generation, Vietnam vet, small business owner, went to a college that no longer exists, and basically completely different side of the political spectrum as myself. You can see we had some mutual interests. That's me as a kid going skiing out west in Washington where he lived. But he kind of always took an interest in me, would send me books and articles when I was growing up, really some of the first in kind of government political science world, and got my interest kind of started there. And when I was about in high school, we started corresponding via email. He'd send me his thoughts on something in the news or vice versa, and we'd have a kind of short conversation on email. And that really evolved and blossomed over the years into what I would describe our relationship as, which was political pen pals. We would write back and forth on the news of the day and argue, debate, always at the end, signing off, your cousin, never getting personal, but definitely disagreeing. And it was a really wonderful relationship. Around 2016, I realized that, a lot was going on in the country with a very turbulent election, that very few people have that kind of trusted counterpart in their life. I just was sort of lucky that I had this relative who was also interested in me, and I was also interested, and it kind of was very fortuitous. But most people do not have that kind of relationship with someone that they kind of know and trust and respect and can understand at least how the other side thinks about an issue, even if they don't agree or get convinced about anything. And so that was kind of the inspiration for Divided We Fall. So we actually launched in 2018, and we publish written debates, not unlike the debates Robert and I would have on email. We even call them political pen pal debates sometimes. And in fact, he and I were some of the first authors of our first debates. And so we've grown a lot since then, as I'll walk you through the next couple slides. But that's really kind of where we all began. And by the way, jump in with any questions, shoot any questions in the chat. So what we do, as I said, we produce bipartisan debates for the politically engaged. It's a term we use, and I can definitely talk about. Written debates, we call them ABAB. So there's about a 500-word opener, response, rebuttal, conclusion. And we publish them to really accomplish two things. One, demonstrate what productive civil discourse can look like. So trying to disagree better, and exposing readers to different viewpoints. So obviously, many of us, too many of us, are siloed into echo chambers online or in person. We only go to news sites that agree with what we already believe, and most people don't want to do the work to go to a news site to read something they disagree with. We kind of try and use a jujitsu where we draw you in, perhaps because an author you know or a viewpoint you believe in is one of the two, and then you sort of get exposed to the other one, perhaps by accident, hopefully as time goes on because you're interested in it too, and also hopefully because the debate, at least in our opinion, is an interesting kind of method, and it kind of attracts attention more than sort of bullet point summaries or things like that. So we publish written debates and expose readers to different viewpoints. I put our values there. We often get asked, do you publish any debate on any topic? Will you platform any opinion? It's definitely a nuanced question. The short of it, though, is we will publish any debate and any viewpoint that aligns with our values. And so it needs to be civil. We're not going to publish people who are using hateful language, swears, of course, just it needs to be civil, like the way you would talk to a friend, a professional relationship, a family member. Bipartisan, so we don't publish partisan op-eds. We publish two different viewpoints. I say bipartisan, not nonpartisan, because we are promoting viewpoints on either side, but together, it's a bipartisan piece. And then truthful, and even that term can be politicized sometimes today. But to the best of our ability, we fact check, we ask authors what they mean by certain things, and we make sure they're cited. And so that doesn't mean we agree with it, but it does mean it is verifiable, and our copy editors can confirm that what someone is claiming is true to the best of our knowledge. So barring that, we try to publish different viewpoints. In fact, that's the whole purpose of why we exist. So we are often in the business of publishing pieces we don't personally agree with, and that's kind of the point. And so our values are a good kind of reference for us and sanity check to make sure we're accomplishing our mission as best as possible. And so our vision is there. I'll just say that we are one of many organizations in the bridge building movement and democracy reform movement. Military Veterans in Journalism surely is another. There's actually hundreds, and we have lists of them that we can send out. Bridge Alliance, Listen First Project are two organizations that kind of aggregate all these groups. But it's a really awesome movement. It's truly a grassroots movement. It's people not unlike us who have a personal story or motivation and want to do something and make a change. And as in our case, our team of 15 plus volunteers that want to also contribute and make a difference. So the bridge building and democracy reform movement, if you're ever super pessimistic about the state of media or politics, is a good place to go for some relief and maybe some hope. Yeah, so I don't want to kind of nerd out too much unless anyone has questions or comments, but we try and base our work on leading academic work, and I'll just maybe pick out a couple, but happy to answer questions. A few authors of mine that kind of have shaped my own political ideology and shaped our work are certainly Jonathan Haidt. He wrote The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Disagree on Politics and Religion. If I were to recommend one thing to read in this space, it's that book. Actually, many organizations and founders that I've spoken to, that book is their inspiration. And the basic idea is that humans are born with moral taste buds. And so, a lot of people assume your political ideology is completely chosen. In fact, it's not. And it's often determined by nature and nurture. So you're sort of born with a predetermined set of what values and things you care about. So, for example, left-leaning people emphasize kind of the care harm foundation and the fairness cheating foundation, whereas more conservative people emphasize those along with the loyalty, authority, and sanctity moral foundation. So even just at that very surface level, perhaps you can even start to see how the two parties and their policy preferences can be derived from those kind of basic moral foundations. So super interesting book, highly recommend. The way we implement that is through our content. And so by having different authors with different moral foundations themselves, we're kind of speaking hopefully to all types of people, regardless of their moral foundations. The other piece is the political class, which is kind of up there on the top. That's a term from Morris Fiorina, who's a Stanford professor. And one of his books, which is a little dated now, but he's published more articles on it since, is called Culture War: The Myth of Polarized America, which is a very interesting topic, or a provocative title, perhaps. And the idea is, yes, the American public is more polarized than previously, but in general, actually, the American public is still pretty moderate. It's kind of a bell curve. Most people actually are not at all interested in politics. It doesn't affect their daily lives. They probably just vote based on how their parents vote or how the people around them vote. And the people that you see in the news, protesting, in office, donating, actively involved in politics, are really a minority, and have more extreme viewpoints and are more active than anyone else. And that kind of loud minority is what gets most of the attention, where in fact most people do not identify with those folks. And so we're trying to target those minorities. They're called the political class, by Morris Fiorina. We're trying to get them involved, get them reading our content, writing our content. Behind their backs, I say they're the problem demographic. They are the people who are polarized. They're also the people who are in power and in media. And so any intervention that ignores them is not going to have the effect, in our opinion, that it needs to have. So that's the kind of who we target and what we look for them to do. In terms of our readers, poll's a little outdated, but last time we did some polling of our readers, we had a very interesting balance where about half identified as nonpartisan, independent, centrist, moderate, and about half identified as with one of the two partisan affiliations. And those were even divided in half as well. So almost a bell curve in and of itself, of where our readers sit. And actually, in some ways, we thought this was a great result. We definitely wouldn't want to only be kind of preaching to the choir and publishing to people who already kind of identify with our with bipartisanship and civility and centrism. But we have some of those people, and we think we're kind of a not a safe space, but a home for them, perhaps, where they might not feel as strong of a connection with other media sources. But also, half of our readers are really that problem demographic in some sense. People who are hopefully coming and getting exposed to different viewpoints, challenging their assumptions, questioning what it is they believe. So interesting balance. We probably need to do some new polling, but that's kind of the demographics when we last polled them. And you can see just some of the academic theories outlined here. Really what we're trying to do is, as I said, demonstrate productive civil discourse. So social learning theory is based on that. You learn by observing others. Complicating the narrative. I think probably anyone who has participated in a debate here knows that when you are engaged with someone you disagree with, you are exposed to facts that you didn't know, or that you wouldn't have emphasized. You understand different motivations and intentions, different values, and it really complicates what it is you thought you knew, makes you question what you know. Constructive controversy, the idea there is essentially that actually debate can be interesting and engaging. It doesn't need to be bland. And in fact, if you're someone like us, someone like me, it's maybe a preferred method of learning. So those are some of the kind of theories we base our work on. As I said, written debate is our core product. We publish a book list every year. I'm a book nerd, so if you have if you want to get some books for your list, your Christmas list, let me know. I'll be happy to send you some. So just a quick snapshot of kind of what we've done. As I said, we launched in 2018. We tried to publish a piece a week. We published over 200 articles at this point, 42 last year. Viewership, not bad for kind of all volunteer nonprofit in a somewhat of a niche space. We're always looking to add more, of course, but a reasonable amount of viewership. The team, you can see on our homepage if you click about and then our team, but 15 volunteers, that's something I'm very proud of. I was telling Devin earlier that I assumed the way organizations were built was that you raise money and then you hire people. And obviously that is how a lot of organizations work. But with us, we've kind of flipped the script and we've built an incredible volunteer team that's extremely dedicated, very professional. Many people, when they meet us, are surprised to hear that we're all volunteers and that we're even volunteers managing volunteers. And we have a team, we have a board, 4 board members as well. So everything from editing, production, communications, development, human capital, operations, you name it. we have folks working that for us and getting that article out once a week. Social media, newsletter, obviously we're in the media business, so we need to get our name out there. And we've raised funds primarily through grassroots funding. So reader donations, some board donations, some partnerships, things like that. Really enough to just kind of keep the lights on and cover our operating expenses. We have a very small amount of operating expenses since we're all volunteers. Yeah, that's been our kind of what we've done to date, numerically at least. Maybe I'll take a step back quickly, go back to our origin story. So when we started, as I said, it was really me and my cousin Robert. We were the authors of most pieces. We didn't have a volunteer team. We had very little readership. Didn't have any money. I joked we were a 4 negative profit, not even a not-for-profit, because we had to put our own money in to get started. Yeah, no board, really, no name recognition. So that was Divided We Fall 1.0. It was the start, essentially. We've been at what I call Divided We Fall 2.0 for the past couple of years now. We have the volunteer team that I discussed, reasonable readership, which we just saw. All of our authors are external, so we recruit professors, journalists, authors, some state and local politicians to participate. Our credibility is really through our authors' credibility. So that's a big point of emphasis for us, of recruiting interesting authors with diverse backgrounds, and unique things to say. We've raised some grassroots funding, yeah, we publish a piece a week. So that's kind of where we are now. Divided We Fall 3.0 is where we're trying to go. So as it says there, we want to be one of the leading voices for this democracy reform movement. There are a lot of organizations that have a lot of different types of interventions, events, groups that meet up and have in-person discussions, podcasts, videos, you name it. Very few, really, if any, in the written debate space. We kind of have there was one other, they lasted a couple of years and then faded. So we outlasted them, which is great. We are really one of the few doing this kind of work. Excuse me. So we want to grow, and grow our presence and grow our brand recognition. The way to do that, we think, really starts with funding. And so raising a significant amount so we can hire some part-time staff. We've essentially realized there's a limit to how many volunteers you can have, managing volunteers, and we're probably at about 20. So a few part-time staff members to try and grow the team, which would allow us to produce more content, hopefully reach more readers, and have a bigger impact. So this is a pretty pivotal year for organizations in this space for reasons that are hopefully obvious. But for us as well, in particular, because this is our 5th year, we think we can kind of keep going at the 2.0 rate for almost as long as we have a team to do it. But this is an important year for impact, in general, for this movement and for our organization. So that's what we're kind of aiming for. And Alan's on this call. We actually just brought him on as our kind of first executive director, and so he's going to be taking the reins on a lot of the day-to-day management and setting some of the strategic vision for the organization. So he's a critical piece. Yeah, that's kind of where we're going. Part of why we wanted to talk to you all was because we rely on people like you to support our work in many different ways. And so there's many ways to help. The easiest are signing up for the newsletter, following us on social media. The most is making a donation. We're a 501c3, so you can make a tax deductible donation. And in between those things, we hire volunteers. You can go to our website to see what positions we have open. We have kind of a new volunteer offering, which we call our ambassadors program. And so that is basically, short of being a sort of full volunteer, which means like you're on our email and our Slack and you're being tasked with things. Ambassadors are kind of halfway between that and just a very active social media follower. So you get to be a part of our team. You help us spread our content online, through your networks, your social media networks. You help us on our fundraising calls. You help us with partnerships. It's kind of you pitch in what you can. And so that's a new program we're launching this year. Definitely check that out. And then referrals. So as I said, we kind of exist on the goodwill of many people, not the least of which are our volunteers, but also our authors, and our partners. And so if you know other organizations, universities, nonprofits, media organizations that you think would be interested in this work or would be interested in learning more, we're always happy to accept referrals as well. So, and I guess the last thing I'd say is we're one of many. If this work is interesting to you, but written debate is not your thing, but you want to get more involved in-person events or podcasts, you name it. As I said, well, you can check out Bridge Alliance and listen first, or you can shoot us a note, shoot me a note, and I'll point you in the right direction. I think, in my opinion, it's kind of all hands on deck this year. Obviously, you guys have some amount of interest, both being, I think, previous service members. That's actually one thing I'll touch on in a second, but as well being members of military veterans in journalism. So if you want to get involved, there are more than enough opportunities. I think the last thing I'll say, just given this group, is another thing I didn't really assume starting out was that there'd be an overlap between my day job and this, which is my night job, my passion project. So by day, I'm a civilian for the Department of Defense. I'm also an Air Force Reserve officer. By night, I'm a nonprofit founder. But the interesting thing is that the overlap now is larger than I ever thought. So I mean, we have a lot of national security leaders talking about how our domestic divisions are some of our biggest national security issues. We have a lot of people talking about how service is a way to bridge divides. Talking about like the greatest generation and kind of the common sacrifice that generation had, the common sort of exposure to people who are very different than them. I mean, I think all of you know when you go to basic training or officer school and you go to your unit, you're with people that you would not have met otherwise from very different backgrounds, all parts of the country, and you have to work together despite your differences to accomplish a goal. There's a lot of people who think that is what is needed to help bridge our divides. And the last thing I'll just say is our team actually, again, sort of somewhat accidentally has a lot of service members on it. Myself, our COO is a Navy reservist. We have another Navy active duty Navy sailor who just got back from a deployment on the USS Gerald R. Ford, a couple military spouses, military dependents. So we never intended to recruit the military community. We're of course happy to have them, but it's been kind of a nice sort of reassuring side effect of our work is we're finding people who already have served or want to serve and want to continue to serve. And we provide them an opportunity to do that. So with that, I will pause for any questions. I know, Alan, you're on the call too, so if there's anything you want to add, please do. And I will shut up for a second.
No, thanks, Joe, and thanks everyone for joining. Really nice to meet all of you.
Thank you so much, Joe, for talking us through a little bit about the history of the publication and as well as your goals and everything like that. I'm going to stop the screen share. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to either use the raise hand function or drop them in the chat, whatever works best for you guys. I will read them out as we go. But we did have some questions. I had some questions rather to run through with you. So first off, could you provide a little bit of an overview about what the publication cycle looks like? What's the day-to-day? How does the editorial process work? Everything like that.
Yeah, definitely. So we publish 2 to 3 authorship series per year. That's kind of the term we use, which really just means it's an umbrella for various types of topics all on one theme. So right now we're publishing a College Bowl series, which is focused on issues on college campuses. This summer, early fall, we'll publish an Election 2024 series. Previously, we've done a series on constitutional questions, foreign policy called Civility Without Borders. All Politics is Local was about state and local politicians and issues at the state level that could be relevant nationally. So we identify topics that we think will be relevant in the time period where we're publishing. It's not easy because we need to prepare 2-3 months in advance because we need to recruit the authors. They each need to draft. Basically, each piece we publish is 4 op-eds. So we need to kind of do the coordination and preparation for that. But I think we've done a reasonable job of that. Within those series umbrellas, we identified 10 to 15 specific debates. So within the College Bowl series, we just published a piece on canceling speakers. We have an upcoming debate on DEI versus MFE. So diversity, equity, inclusion versus merit, fairness, and equality, just 2 different kind of systems for thinking about things like admissions and hiring and representation. So we identify a dozen or so debates within each topic, and then we recruit authors. And so this is all work that our production team does. They reach out to actually hundreds of authors and identify the right ones. We need to obviously get two that disagree. It's part of the challenge. And then we connect them and have them write 500-word openers, responses, rebuttals, and conclusions. And so then we package that up, edit it, and publish it. We try and publish one a week. Yeah, that's our kind of standard content. We also publish, we call it out of cycle, which just means sometimes other things come up that we weren't planning for, but we feel like we need to say something about as an organization. We do that as well. So it's kind of a mix, but we have our general authorship series format.
And you said part of the challenge was finding two folks who disagree. So how do you encourage like camaraderie or civility when you find those two people?
That's one of the advantages of the written format. I will say that. So like, I think there are a lot of opportunities if you want to see people yelling at each other in person to do that by tuning into like most media networks when they have a panel discussion. So I think that share of the market is sufficiently fulfilled. The nice part about written debate is you have an opportunity, well, one, just to take a breath, think about what you want to write and respond. Also, we're a facilitator, so we receive the piece, we'll read it before we send it to the author. If there's like something too inflammatory, then we will ask them to rewrite it, or we'll cut it before we send it to the other author. So we try and make sure we're kind of facilitating productive discussions. I think there's somewhat of a selection bias in that someone who's completely opposed to the idea of debating someone from the other side and doesn't want to platform them won't even agree to participate. So we still find people who disagree, but they're at least willing to engage. But we have had authors who believe they are and then get the opener or response and say, hey, I'm out. Like, I'm not going to engage with this perspective. But that is a very small minority of people. If anything, I think reading the other author's opinion kind of motivates people to respond. It's something they disagree with. They want to voice their opinion and convince readers that they're right. So there's kind of a little bit of an incentive there. But yeah, we do just a lot. Our production team identifies authors based on things they've published in the past, based on the books they've written or courses they teach. There's a lot of cold outreach, and then we get some willing participants, and a lot of people end up publishing with us multiple times because they enjoyed the experience.
And on a kind of related note, how do you and your team decide what topics to cover? Do you decide based on what you see on, say, social media, for instance, or for instance, during an election year, what things are being talked about by politicians? How do you decide that?
As I said, it's a difficult thing sometimes because you're projecting a couple months in advance. The election cycles are a little easier. So we did a midterm series. We did like a Biden's first 100 days series. We also just want to get some variety in what we publish. Like, you can only talk about immigration so many times. So we try and think about, what are different angles, different kind of pools of ideas that we could dig into. So like the constitutional questions was an interesting one. It was a bit more academic and theoretical. The foreign policy one was its own world. We mostly published domestic policy, so that was kind of a new pool of authors that we could tap into. We have a whole running list. There's kind of more series than we can currently accommodate. So we have a lot of future ideas, and one of them is actually related to future technology and kind of the impacts that AI will have on automation and workforce and transportation. So there's kind of endless topics, and it's a little bit of just, hey, what do we think is relevant now? What will be relevant in the next few months? Any big events that are coming up that we think we want to have something to say about? So yeah, that's kind of how we do it.
And in terms of coverage as well, do you ever see yourself moving the publication into any kind of just strict news coverage, or do you see it as continually being just a dialogue ground?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of what we do is based on what is the media bias chart. You can Google that. It's quite interesting. It shows kind of an array of where news organizations are based on their partisanship, as well as whether they're kind of opinion analysis or more fact reporting. And you might not be surprised to know, a lot of opinionated, partisan opinion and analysis. So think, Jacobin on the left and Breitbart on the right. And those are kind of two extreme examples, but, Wall Street Journal op-ed versus New York Times op-ed. Like there's a lot of places you can go on the internet if you want to find one person's viewpoint on an issue. That's not a need that we think we need to serve. But the other part is there's actually a lot of neutral fact reporting organizations, AP, CNN. I mean, if you just want to Axios, if you just want to find out what happened, there's a lot of that. And so we also don't think we need to get into that space. But where there is kind of a gap in this chart is in bipartisan opinion and analysis. And so that's what we want to do. We have our own approach. There are other organizations in that space, like All Sides, which is a news aggregator, which you go to their homepage and you'll see a headline. So just take what was in the news recently, the Houthi shooting rockets at U.S. forces. You'll see 3 articles, one from the left, one from the right, and one from the center based on their ratings of those news organizations. And so you can get all 3 viewpoints in 3 different articles. So that's kind of another interesting approach. But the bottom line is bipartisan opinion and analysis is what we're trying to do, and it's a need that we think exists. And so we plan to stay in that space. The corollary to that question is, will it always be written? That's something we think about and talk about sometimes. Again, we think there's a need in the written space. There used to be more in the sort of audiovisual space, especially PBS NewsHour used to have David Brooks and Mark Shields, which was an awesome segment. They're firing line back in the day. There are a few here and there. There are increasingly few of them. Chris Wallace, back when he was on Fox News, had a great bipartisan panel most Sundays. So that's probably a need, but probably one we can't address. There's a lot of podcasts in this space. We probably wouldn't go there. So right now, we think written bipartisan debate is a niche that's not being served otherwise. If that changes, we could be prepared to pivot, but that's what we're sticking with right now.
Are there any things rather that folks who are interested in volunteering or writing with you guys should know before they get involved that maybe you haven't already talked about?
No, I mean, reach out. The worst we can tell you is no, but beggars can't be choosers. So we also, we actually, part of the reason for launching the ambassadors program is we do actually get a reasonable number of applicants to volunteer. But at the very least, we are looking for ambassadors, we're looking for subscribers, and we're looking for just champions of our work. But if you think you have skills that are applicable, we have a running list of volunteer opportunities. And if we don't have one right now, we have a list of people who we think would be good for them in the future. And then, writing for us. I mean, if you send us your resume and you have credentials to speak about an issue, we're certainly happy to talk about that. We may actually be doing kind of a mini series with military veterans in journalism. So you all might be hearing more about that and might have the opportunity to participate then as well. But bottom line is, more the merrier, all hands on deck. So whether it's us right now or in the future or other organizations in the space, if you want to get involved, we're happy to point you in the right direction.
Other than obviously writing skills, what else are you looking for in contributors?
For authors, I mean, writing skills, background and experience. I definitely am someone who values someone who has kind of lived there, been there, done that, lived something and can write from that perspective, not just someone who's sort of has interesting theories and ideas, but hasn't actually done the work. I think for a veterans focused series, which we might be publishing, probably most of you would be qualified as veterans yourself. If you're bringing other skills and backgrounds to the table, definitely highlight that as well. But as I said, our credibility is really through our authors and their credibility. And so the bar for publishing is definitely higher than it used to be. It used to be, we would joke, if you're alive and breathing is optional. So now we can actually have some standards by which we hold our authors to. But as I said, if you're interested, all it takes is an email and we'll point you in the right direction.
If anybody on this call is interested in contributing and has a topic of their own, do you guys accept those or keep those in mind? What does that process look like?
Yeah, definitely. We have a article submission form on the site, or you can email just our info@dividedwefall.org. And that'd fall into the out of cycle content category. So we do get submissions. And yeah, again, it's as easy as an email. It'll depend on the topic, it'll depend on the author and the timing. But if we have a interesting author that has a good idea on an article we haven't published before, we'll entertain it for sure. Sometimes we'll ask you if you have ideas of who would be a good counterpart, if you know someone. If you come with two people who are ready and willing to debate and have the credentials, you've done half of our job for us. So we're much more inclined to say yes to that. But you don't need to. It's if you're someone with the right background with something interesting to say on a topic we want to publish, then we make it work.
Yes. Do you fact check claims made in people's arguments, or how do you ensure the arguments are in good faith, not just pushing talking points?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Kareem. So yeah, we do have a team of copy editors, and their job is to edit for clarity, for staying on topic, readability, and then truthfulness. As I said, that's one of our values. That's something we focus on. So they will look for citations, they will ask for citations, they'll verify citations. So that's part of what they do. As I kind of alluded to, unfortunately, truth is sometimes something that is partisan now. And so it's somewhere where we need to be careful and make sure we're not just saying, we don't agree with this perspective, and so we're going to be more strict about what we do or do not count. We're going to cut more from it. We've had editors who, it's you can't even really fault them, but we noticed, I wear the editor-in-chief hat. We have a managing editor. We monitor the work of our associate editors and have seen sometimes they will edit a piece kind of more strictly if we surmise they don't agree with that perspective, and that's something we'll coach them on and train them on. And in some ways that's like their own development in this and learning in this bipartisan world, which is not easy to do, but is hopefully beneficial to them and people they know. So anyways, yes, we do check for truthfulness to the best of our abilities and as good faith as we possibly can. No one's perfect. We all have biases, but our goal is to expose readers to viewpoints. So if we're changing things or editing things, it's not because we don't agree with it and want to censor it. Our entire purpose is to expose readers to different viewpoints. So it's just to try and keep it to as truthful as we possibly can and based on reliable sources. And we're human. We are not perfect, but that's what we try and do.
Thank you.
You said that you do like a publication like quarterly and then weekly or something like that. You just mentioned you have a website, right?
Yep. Yeah. dividedwefall.org. You can check out all of our kind of most recent pieces. So yeah, we publish an article a week, a debate a week, more or less. And then, yeah, we do, monthly newsletter, social media posts, all that good stuff. But one debate a week is kind of our battle rhythm that we try and stick to.
Do you do like anthologies as well?
Oh, no, we don't do print. We've been in a few, like interviewed for chapters in books, and we've been cited in print, but no, we don't do print right now. That could be something we get into, but not currently.
Do you also do like blogs and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, our site is a glorified blog in some sense.
Look at the website, then I'll check it out.
Yeah, definitely do.
Thank you for coming to share your story.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for dialing in.
Yeah.
Are the debates, like, I know you say you have a cycle when you like have an issue come up, but like, do you ever like take an issue as like it's settled until somebody comes up with a better argument or a better case for it, or do you recycle through arguments?
Yeah, good question. So, we published 200 articles. At some point, you don't run out of things to debate, but it's worth it to revisit debates. You have different authors. The facts might change. There might be recent events that change people's opinions. So we have definitely covered many facets of, say, immigration is like one piece we've talked about a lot. Another has like electoral reform. We've published pieces on like alternative voting methods and voting access, and we're publishing one on the primary system. So you kind of learn to find different angles on similar topics. And it's kind of like chess. Like you can have the same starting positions, but as it evolves, it takes on its own life and ends up being a unique piece, even if the starting point was similar to something you've done before. So we haven't done, I would say, out of our 200 articles, much that really overlaps, even if the high level topic overlaps. But it is a challenge to continue to find debates that are relevant and interesting to folks. So I think that's where the series idea helps. Is we know, we're going to focus our election content this summer and fall because that's when it's going to be really relevant. Right now, we published some education policy pieces in the past few years, but obviously, given the events of the past 3-4 months, we felt like having a conversation about college campuses, what's going on in college campuses, how students are feeling and reacting, and what can be done to improve the experience for everybody would be a relevant topic. And so if you'd asked me a year ago, would we be publishing on that? I wouldn't have thought so, but just kind of targeted opportunity to try and make a difference and be a part of the national conversation that's going on. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, but it's a little bit of both.
It did. Thank you.
Thanks for making the time. If anything you heard is interesting to you, I'm just an email away. I'm a partial email addict, so you'll get a response within a day or two. Yeah, just thank you for your service. Thank you for the work you're doing with military veterans and journalism. And I hope we cross paths again.
Thank you so much, Joe and Alan, for joining us tonight. We really, really appreciate you taking some time. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking some time to be here. I hope you all have a great rest of your night.